On the night of March the 3rd of 2017, a raucous house party unfolded at an address in Williamsburg, Michigan. According to local law enforcement, the gathering was hosted by the Boylan family, consisting of 18-year-old Hannah, as well as her parents, Dwayne and Jeffrey. The latter was described as a volunteer assistant football coach at Elk Rapids High School. A large number of teenage students from the school were present at the party in question. In interviews with the police, some of the partygoers revealed that they were instructed to give Hannah $5 for alcohol and pizza upon their arrival at the house. There was also a stocked bar in the basement, and many of the underage revelers occupied their time by playing drinking games. In the days that followed, rumors began circulating that Jeffrey had had intimate relations with one of the partygoers. The student was said to have been at the age of consent, so the man wasn't criminally charged for the encounter. He was, however, arrested in connection with the underage drinking he and his wife facilitated. Jeffrey, Dwayne, and Hannah were all arraigned on charges of selling or furnishing alcohol to a minor and allowing minors to consume alcohol. Dwayne and Hannah agreed to plea deals, sparing the latter any jail time. Her mother, meanwhile, was sentenced to 30 days in jail, which was ordered to begin immediately after the conclusion of Jeffrey's 60-day sentence, the maximum term allowed by law. Number 7. Richard Maurice Colbert. The Miami Police Department received a call about an out-of-control house party on May the 7th of 2022. Witnesses claimed to have seen some of the 50 or so attendees tossing glass bottles at passing cars. Upon arrival, officers encountered Richard Maurice Colbert, better known by his stage name, I Love Memphis. The hip-hop artist, who rose to prominence following the release of his Billboard-charting debut single, Hit the Quan, in 2016, was slurring his speech and smelled strongly of alcohol while speaking with law enforcement. When asked to identify himself, Colbert was unable to do so, and the officers subsequently moved to arrest him. As police attempted to handcuff him, he tensed up his body and shouted insulting profanities at them, refusing to cooperate. After the 29-year-old rapper was eventually wrangled into custody, he faced charges of resisting arrest and disorderly intoxication. Number 6. Miranda Hinnant. In the early hours of July the 12th of 2021, an officer from the University of Central Florida Police Department pulled over a vehicle near the intersection of Alafaya Trail and Gemini Boulevard in Orlando. The driver, a university student named Miranda Hinnant, indicated that she and her 3 passengers were coming from a local college hangout and sports bar called the Knights Library. When asked if she'd had anything to drink, 19-year-old Hinnant said she'd consumed 3 beers. The officers, who claimed to have been overwhelmed by the stench of alcohol, subsequently requested that Hinnant step out of the vehicle to perform sobriety tests. In the traffic stop's official report, it was noted that the young woman had trouble tracking the light of the officer's stimulus with her eyes. When asked to perform the walk and turn exercise by maintaining a straight path as she moved, Hinnant was unable to do so. She was also unable to balance herself on one leg and was subsequently taken into custody on suspicion of DUI. Hinnant was taken to the Orange County Jail while her vehicle was released to a sober friend. Number 5. Scottish partygoer. A Scottish man's especially rowdy night of partying was the subject of a viral morning after video that made the rounds in April of 2019. The unnamed man recorded himself as he described in amusing detail the circumstances that led to him waking up in a complete stranger's house. Following a particularly rambunctious house party the night before, he'd summoned a taxi to take him home. When the taxi never arrived, he decided to return to the home where the gathering had taken place, but drunkenly stumbled into the wrong house. After rummaging through the kitchen and attempting to make himself some instant noodles, the man crashed on the couch. He awoke the next morning terribly hungover, with 2 strangers standing over him. Fortunately, the homeowners empathized with the man's predicament and made him a cup of tea before sending him on his way. Number 4. Matteo Panagos. Deputies from the Polk County Sheriff's Office in Florida responded to a home in the Cypress Point gated community in Davenport. On July the 22nd of 2020, the department had reportedly received numerous noise complaints in relation to a house party being held at the residence in question. Upon law enforcement's arrival, the partygoers began to disperse, with one of them, a 16-year-old from Winter Garden named Ryan Collum, getting behind the wheel of a Kia Stinger. In his bid to flee the scene, Collum struck 4 other 16-year-olds who were standing in the driveway as he made his reckless escape. One of the pedestrians, a female, was dragged beneath the car for about 450 feet. roughly the length of 2 Boeing 787 Dreamliners. She was consequently left with a permanent serious injury, the specifics of which weren't disclosed. The 3 other teens reportedly suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Colum drove off but was later located about 8 miles away. Following his arrest, police shifted the focus of their investigation to the host of the unlawful open house party. The property had reportedly been rented through VRBO by a man from Corpus Christi, Texas. However, following further investigation, authorities learned that the Texas resident's identity had been stolen. 18-year-old Matteo Panagos, a high school student from Orlando, was subsequently identified as the individual responsible for both the identity theft and the party. Panagos was arrested on charges of burglary, criminal use of personal identification, and allowing minors to consume alcohol. Number 3. Bryce Waters, Deanna Bake, and Brenda Garner. A scene of sheer chaos erupted at a house party in the 3600 block of Santa Sabina Avenue in Las Cruces, New Mexico during the early morning hours of July the 10th of 2020. Just after 2 a.m., local police received several calls about gunfire breaking out at the residence. Officers were dispatched to investigate, whereupon they came across a 16-year-old partygoer suffering from a gunshot wound that hospital workers later determined to be non-life-threatening. Following a preliminary investigation into what had transpired at the unruly gathering, authorities established that at one point one of the attendees had opened fire with a rifle, hitting the teenage victim. Investigators also confirmed that several of the partygoers were underage, at least 3 of whom were intoxicated. Police arrested a trio of suspects identified as Bryce Waters, Deanna Bake, and Brenda Garner. When police had initially arrived at the scene, they attempted to stop a vehicle from leaving, at which point they were assaulted by Waters. While the latter was being taken into custody, Bake and Garner allegedly stepped in to fight the officers on his behalf. Bake's mother was accused of helping her rent the property where the party was hosted. The event was originally organized to celebrate Waters' birthday. The latter told detectives that he'd obtained a large amount of alcohol for the get-together and also admitted to charging a $2 entry fee. He was charged with contributing to the delinquency of a minor, battery upon a peace officer, and assault upon a peace officer. As of the most recent updates on the matter, the shooter, who wasn't identified, was still at large. Today's topic was requested by Deanna. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. South Kingstown Party. At around 6:30 p.m. on October the 8th of 2022, the police in South Kingstown, Rhode Island, received reports of a large house party making excessive noise. Responding officers came across 350 to 400 partygoers, many of whom were intoxicated, and also noted that red Solo cups had been strewn all over the property. Investigators subsequently determined that the house was being rented by students of the University of Rhode Island. 4 individuals were arrested in the aftermath of the rager. They were identified as Anthony Galbuni, Ryan P. Brom, James Geeson, and Sean Healy, all of whom were below the legal drinking age of 21. The students consequently faced criminal charges that included possession of alcohol by an underage person, furnishing alcohol to minors, and obstructing an officer in execution of duty. As of the latest developments, the investigation was still ongoing and authorities were still deciding whether to bring charges against the property owners as well. If you're not done with this viewing party just yet after number 1, then we have our earlier release on When Bachelor Parties Go Wrong lined up for you next. Number 1. Travis Turkle. 42-year-old Travis Turkle from Rayland, Ohio, was arrested following a wild party at his home on the night of August the 6th of 2022. An estimated 200 teenagers, many of whom were friends of Turkle's son, congregated on a man's property located 135 miles east of Columbus. News of the gathering spread like wildfire on social media as more and more teens showed up at the house, exacerbating the crowd's unruliness. The rowdiness eventually escalated to the point where several physical fights broke out among attendees. A number of people landed in the hospital as a result of the violence, including a boy whose face and head were covered in cuts from a broken bottle, a girl who was punched in the face, and another boy who was pistol whipped in the head. As the situation spiraled out of control, Turkle went inside the house to retrieve a shotgun, which he then fired into the air to encourage partygoers to leave. Although no one called 911 to alert the authorities, the police caught wind of the situation after the injured attendees were transported to the hospital. Officers subsequently went to the home to investigate. Turkle told them that he hadn't fired any weapon as witnesses claimed, but that the fights had started after he'd tried confiscating inebriated people's car keys. In spite of the man's claims, officers reportedly recovered 2 spent shotgun shells, which were found among the countless cans and bottles scattered around the property. Turkle maintained that he was out with his girlfriend for most of the night, but testimony from partygoers indicated that he'd been present at the house throughout the evening. He was arrested on charges of endangering children, using weapons while intoxicated, and aggravated menacing. While Turkle awaited his case's next steps, investigators continued looking into the brawls that resulted in 3 teens' hospitalizations. Number 8. Rachelle Friedman. Shortly after attending her bachelorette party in May of 2010, Rachelle Friedman and her friends decided to go swimming. At some point during the nighttime swim, the 25-year-old East Carolina University graduate was playfully pushed into the pool by her best friend. In what Friedman would later describe as a freak accident, she hit her head on the bottom of the pool. The bride-to-be instantly went stiff and shouted for help upon floating back to the surface. Her friends called 911 and she was pulled from the water. Friedman saw her legs submerged but couldn't feel the water on them. Doctors at the Virginia Beach Hospital in Virginia told her that she had suffered a C6 spinal cord injury, leaving her unable to walk or have any sensation beneath the collarbone. Friedman had met her husband-to-be, Chris Chapman, while studying at ECU. Their wedding was postponed in the accident's wake, but they eventually got married in July of 2011, and a few years later welcomed daughter Kaylee, who was born to a surrogate. Friedman became a blogger and author, chronicling the challenges she faced as a mother and a quadriplegic. She authored a book called The Promise, named so after the pact she and her friends had made to never name the woman who'd pushed her in the pool. Friedman did numerous interviews and media appearances but never revealed her identity, even refusing an interview with Oprah, as it had stipulated that they could only come on the show together. The woman who'd pushed her, described as depressed and distraught in the accident's aftermath, remained Friedman's best friend, and they emotionally supported each other. After a few years, however, Friedman told a media outlet that they'd drifted apart and were no longer friends. Today's featured fan shout-out is Instagram follower DauntingDauntless81. To appear in our next video, send us your pic rocking the latest merch from theywillkillyou.com and send it in to us on Instagram today. Number 7. Sterling Joseph Beecroft. Chaos erupted at Oklahoma City's Club Rodeo in 2009 as it became the scene of a brawl involving a bachelorette party and 27-year-old Mustang man, Sterling Joseph Beecroft. Reports differed on how the fracas played out, but it was believed to have sparked up between the man's wife, Andrea, and some of the women from the party. She and Beecroft claimed that the other women had pushed her around, while they, in turn, maintained Andrea had been the main aggressor. Beecroft then violently intervened to what he later claimed had been the defense of his wife. He grabbed bachelorette Emily Cunningham by the throat and slammed her face into a wall. 2 other women, both in their late 20s, were struck with a beer bottle and repeatedly punched with a closed fist as they tried to help Cunningham. Bouncers detained Beecroft in the club's parking lot until the police arrived to take him into custody. At around 1 a.m., Beecroft's processing photo showed him with blood, cuts and bruises to his face, injuries he'd claimed to have suffered during the scuffle with security staff. He was charged with assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. Number 6. Sial Saily. California man Sial Saily got into an argument with the members of a bachelorette party while at a Holiday Inn bar in Wilsonville, Oregon. Several of the women then complained to staff and the bartender asked 27-year-old Saily to leave. He consequently flew into a fit of rage and surveillance cameras captured him as he began throwing chairs and other items around the bar while also threatening patrons. One of the flung pieces of furniture narrowly missed the bartender as he was on the phone with the authorities. Several other 911 calls were placed from the bar, including one from an individual who reported that although unharmed, the suspect was going psycho. He caused thousands of dollars in damage. None of the Holiday Inn's patrons, including the women from the bachelorette party or staff, were reported to have sustained serious injuries in Saily's rampage. He was subsequently arrested on suspicion of menacing, criminal mischief, interfering with making a report, criminal trespassing, and disorderly conduct. Number 5. Alexandra Chitty. New Jersey woman Alexandra Chitty was visiting Nashville, Tennessee for a friend's bachelorette party in the summer of 2019. Local police were called to the Airbnb that had been rented for the revelry on the afternoon of June the 6th and found the heavily intoxicated Chitty sitting on the steps while bleeding from her foot. The 29-year-old told officers that she went psycho after drinking 2 bottles of wine by herself. She'd locked herself out of the property at some point and proceeded to kick through windows with her bare feet, suffering injuries in the process. In addition to breaking the house's front windows, she also reportedly threw furniture around, damaging blinds, a chair, and a lamp. Chitty was hospitalized for treatment to her foot and then arrested on a felony vandalism charge. Number 4. Ryanair bachelorette party. Passengers on a Ryanair flight from Liverpool to the Spanish resort city of Alicante cheered when the plane touched down at its destination on July the 27th of 2017. Their exuberance was attributed to local authorities boarding the aircraft and removing several women who'd been severely disrupting the flight. They were part of a bachelorette party and, as one passenger reported, had acted like creatures throughout the flight. Their drunken antics involved screaming, swearing, and moving freely throughout the aircraft, even as the seatbelt light was on. They blocked the aisle at times and shouted at staff or other passengers who told them to be quiet. Their behavior got so bad that the crew stopped selling alcohol, and the pilot warned them the aircraft would be diverted to France if they didn't settle down, which they consistently refused to do. Other travelers booed them off as they were taken into custody upon landing. One woman from the group, with the Facebook username Emma Yates, defended their actions on the platform. Her post read, "Yes, we was drunk. Yes, we was embarrassed," before going on to say that they were just having fun on holiday, emphasizing that she didn't care about other people's opinions. Number 3. Kaylee and Sawyer. In the early hours of July the 24th of 2016, Kaylee and Sawyer got into an argument with her boyfriend outside her apartment building, close to the campus of the Central Oregon Community College, where she was a student. 23-year-old Sawyer, who was inebriated at the time, had returned from a bachelorette party, and the row with her partner ended with him going back in their building. When he returned outside, Sawyer was gone, and he later received a text from her that read, "Goodbye," before she switched off her cell phone. The message would become Sawyer's chilling last words to her boyfriend. After she'd walked away from the apartment complex, Sawyer accepted a ride from campus security guard Edwin Lara, who was in his patrol car. As investigators would later report, Lara then trapped her inside the patrol SUV, which featured a plexiglass separation panel and auto-locking doors. He drove the young student to a secluded parking lot. Sawyer fruitlessly tried to fight him off as Lara abused and killed her, reportedly by smashing her in the head with a rock. The security guard went home and told his wife, Isabel Ponce Lara, that he'd accidentally struck the victim with his patrol car. He then drove away from the home, but Ponce Lara, who'd recently become a police officer in Bend, reported him to the authorities. In a shed at their home, the police found Sawyer's blood-splattered purse and shoes, bloody women's and men's clothing, in addition to other belongings. The student's lifeless body was discovered on the side of the road near 18700 West Highway 126 on July the 26th. Before he was eventually captured, Lara went on a 2-day crime spree from northwest Oregon to northern California. No more fatalities were recorded, but he did kidnap a second woman, 19-year-old Andrea Elizabeth Mays, shot a man in the stomach during an attempted carjacking, and stole a car with 3 family members inside. After his arrest, Lara reached a deal with prosecutors and admitted guilt to robbery and aggravated murder for Sawyer's death, for which he was given a life sentence. He subsequently pleaded guilty to his other crimes, including the kidnapping of Mays, and received a second life sentence.
You face that damn thing down right now. If you know the only way, if you don't have intent in her head, your thought is, I gotta keep that phone away from her because she's gonna call from help before anything bad's even happened. You've already made a decision. Am I right or am I wrong? Tell me.
So I made the decision at that time to silence her.
To kill her. Let's be real. When you say silence her, you mean kill her. Is that correct?
Because
when did you make that decision?
When she started screaming. Because she has seen my face.
But you already grabbed her phone. You already kept her away from making a call for help or contacting someone. So you're already preserving yourself. So I'm thinking it's before. When you ask for the purse, I think you already know in your head, I'm going to silence her. I'm going to kill her. Why else would you ask?
Number 2. Colette Moreno. 26-year-old Colette Moreno was being driven to her bachelorette party by her best friend, Ashley Theobald, on June the 20th of 2014. As they were traveling towards Lake Ozark, Missouri for a weekend of celebration, Theobald got close to a truck spewing fumes on Missouri Highway 5. Seeing that the emissions were aggravating Moreno's asthma, Theobald made sure that no vehicles were coming from the opposite direction and crossed the double yellow line to pass the truck. As her Chevy Malibu sped up to make the pass quickly, a Dodge Ram that neither woman had spotted came up a slight hill. The two vehicles swerved in the same direction and collided head-on, with the brunt of the impact absorbed on the Chevy's passenger side, where Moreno sat. Theobald and the other vehicle's driver sustained minor injuries. 3 hours after the collision and 5 weeks before her wedding, Moreno was pronounced dead, leaving behind a 5-year-old son. In the accident's aftermath, a selfie taken by Moreno showing both women excitedly smiling for the camera gained attention on the internet. Numerous users mistakenly interpreted it as having had a crucial role in distracting them and thus causing the accident. In reality, the photo had been taken roughly 8 minutes prior to the crash. Number 1. Kisha Latrice Marrow Lott. In October of 2018, Kisha Latrice Marrow Lott from Norfolk, Virginia, hired a shuttle bus for a friend's bachelorette party. The 37-year-old and the other attendees were taken to the Main in downtown Norfolk and got back on the custom-fitted party bus at around 1 a.m. They continued drinking and dancing as the driver, Michael Wheeler, pulled onto Waterside Drive and headed toward the eastbound entrance of I-264. The bus then climbed up a ramp and, as others would later report, reached a bumpier part of the road. The bridesmaids kept dancing and didn't notice that Marrow Lott had lost her footing, tumbled down the steps and slammed into the doors. Then someone was heard repeatedly screaming out, "Kisha fell out of the bus!" The mother of two's 120-pound frame had been enough to force the doors open, and she suffered fatal injuries in the consequent fall. An investigation lasting several months ultimately brought no criminal charges to Wheeler or his wife, who owned the party bus. Marrow Lott's husband, however, filed a $25 million lawsuit against the couple, accusing them of negligence. Thanks for watching. Would you rather have neighbors who throw loud parties every weekend, or a dog that barks periodically throughout the night? Let us know in the comments section below.